Good evening. Welcome to the Dublin Linux Developer Meetup. I'm your host, Neil Richens, and joined Steve Beanie, co-host. This month we have Nico Balestra from Gravitee. Nico is a senior solution engineer with over 15 years experience in software engineering, digital transformation, consultancy, API architecture, and solution engineering. In the last 5 years, he's been focusing on accelerating organizational digital transformation programs through effective API strategy and deployment. Nico, over to you.
Hi all, nice to meet you. So I'm Nico Balestra. I work for Gravitee and I'm based in London. So the purpose of this meeting, I will be focusing on showcasing the Gravitee platform and how it allows you to manage and secure an API in minutes instead of days. So shall I start sharing my screen now? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to run through a few slides. I promise it's not going to be dead by slides. Just to introduce what Gravitee is. Gravitee is a platform, is an ecosystem, so it's not a single tool. So I'm going to give you an overview of the entire platform. And finally, I will go through a quick demo. So Gravitee was founded in 2015 by 4 developers who were working with customers trying to manage their APIs, and they realized there was no easy solution to manage APIs. So they decided to build their own. So it was founded in France, but now we are a worldwide company with offices in London, Sweden, France, US, and so on. So first of all, I'll give you a quick overview of the Gravitee ecosystem. So as I said, Gravitee is not a single product, but it's allows you to cover the entire API lifecycle. So at the core of Gravitee, we have an API management solution, which provides all the capabilities you would expect from an API management solution. That's, for example, securing your API, publishing your API to a portal. So it's easy to discover and consume the API internally or even externally. So if you want to, for example, publish API for third party to consume. But also Gravitee comes with an access management solution. So the majority of API management solution out there, they only do API management, while we also provide an access management solution. So for organizations or developers who are looking for an identity provider, Gravitee comes with an access management solution, which allows you to protect. Imagine you have like even home lab. You can actually use access manager to allow your children to access certain systems versus yourself managing everything. So basically provides an OpenID Connect and O2 identity provider with a multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, and so on. And these are actually 2 open source components. So you can, for free, obviously, go on our GitHub repository. Maybe you can build the platform yourself. We also provide Docker images, so you can build. We provide actually Docker Compose file, so you can spin up Gravitee in a few seconds on your laptop. For more complex use cases, so for big organizations who are entertaining a complex API strategy, we also provide further capabilities like an API designer solution, which I will be showing today. Which allows you to design an API contract using a sort of drag and drop approach. Really powerful because, for example, it can be used to draft quickly an API design, API contract, instead of having to like code in OpenAPI specification, which can be a bit tedious, and also allows developers to collaborate with like business analysts or product owners. Alert engine to get notifications when, for example, an API is down. And finally, Cockpit is a single pane of glass to manage. For example, you might have different instances of API Manager, one for a production environment, one for a development environment. So Cockpit allows you to manage all these installations under a single pane of glass. And these, as I mentioned, are for more complex use cases. And we provide these capabilities as enterprise capabilities. Gravitee can be deployed pretty much anywhere. So we provide a SaaS offering, but as I mentioned, since Gravitee is pretty much open source, You can also install Gravitee on your own laptop infrastructure. If you have a server, as I have upstairs, you can also install that to manage your personal APIs, or even in terms of access management, to manage access to your house system. And also we provide the ability to run natively on Linux. So we have RPMs if you want to install on CentOS or Red Hat, or Helm chart if you want to run on Kubernetes, Docker Compose if you want to run on Docker or AWS ECS, and so on. So before going to the demo, is it okay if I ask if there is any question, or should I just move forward? Yeah, it's fine, right? Yeah, okay. So in terms of API Lifecycle, so the managing an API can be a complex task. API is not just implementing the API and making the API available to a consumer. There are certain aspects depending on, especially, for example, if you want to publish the API, imagine like the eBay's API or the Amazon APIs. These APIs are APIs which are consumed potentially by millions of people. So before exposing your API to external parties, you really need to make sure your API is secure. It's easy to understand for developers, so you want to provide a good developer experience. So all these aspects of an API can be delivered by using different tools, right? But the problem is with that you will need to kind of integrate the integration tool. So what Gravitee provides is a single platform to manage the entire life cycle, potentially starting from an existing contract, or if you don't have anything about your API, it allows you to also design an API using a visual approach. And that's what I'm going to show today in the demo. So this is how the API lifecycle looks like in Gravitee. So normally you start with some organizations, developers, they like to do a design first approach. So instead of going heads on with implementation, so like you get the requirements from your business analyst, instead of going straight into the implementation, you can start with designing the contract. So you define what data the API, for example, needs to expose. What are the domain object the API needs to provide access to. There are different benefits by adopting design first approach. For example, you can use the contract to get validation from the business, from maybe your clients. You can also, and that takes us to the next step, the prototyping, because you can use the contract to, for example, expose a mocking service. So people can start hitting your API, getting fake data, but that allows a developer to start building a client application, for example, while the API developer is building the implementation. You typically need also to obviously secure the API. You can do this with the API key, O2 authentication, multi-factor authentication. So regardless, Gravitee provides a platform to do that using a drag and drop approach. And again, I will show all of this in the demo. Then you want to make sure you are fully confident, you know how your API is performing. So we provide like out-of-the-box analytics, so you will know exactly how your API is performing, who is using the API, like what application, but also what user is using the API, where the traffic is coming from, and so on. And finally, once you are ready, so you are confident your API is fully secured, is well documented, is well defined, you will typically deploy your API to the portal so people can start discovering. Because one of the benefits really of an API is allowing all other developers to build their applications faster, because obviously all the data you need, which the API provides, you don't need to build that piece of logic every time you build your application. So that's the main value you obtain from an API. But obviously, in order to leverage that value, you need developers to be able to discover your API. So Gravitee comes with a fully customizable portal, which allows you to consume and discover APIs. Okay, so that's like a presentation of who we are, what we provide, and now I will go straight into the demo. Okay, so, and by the way, I was forgetting last slide, which is all I'm going to show today can be fully automated as well. So all the steps and tasks to manage the API can also be achieved by leveraging our platform APIs. And by the way, you can see here there is a kind of order, but these steps don't have to happen in order. Just because from a presentation perspective, you need to give order to things. But as I mentioned, for example, with the ability of using the contract to do parallel development, you can actually start to publish your API while the implementation is happening. So this doesn't have to happen in that actual order. In fact, in my demo, I will jump back and forth between different steps, which is okay because that means you can do different things in parallel. The platform doesn't enforce you to do things in a certain order. So first of all, I'll show you Cockpit. So again, this is an environment which allows big organizations to manage all the instances of API management. Typical example is some organizations. I was working a few years ago with a big public sector organization in the UK, and they didn't allow any developer to access their production data and installation, which means we had to create two different instances of API Manager for different, sometimes they have like air-gapped networks, so they won't allow anyone to click on stuff in production. So we had to install two different instances of API management. And Gravitee allows you, Cockpit allows you to manage all these different installations. Now, in my case, I have a single one, which is linked to two different environments, but sometimes customers might have more. And from here, I can also like visualize and monitor the state of my gateways, state of my API management instance. I can see what version it is and what plugins have been installed. Now, from Cockpit, so this is our SaaS product. So this is not something we offer as an open source product, but it's free to use. So you can log into Cockpit. You will get for free 2 environments. So you can install API Manager on premise. It's open source, so that's completely free to use. And you can attach that environment to 1 or 2 Cockpit environments if you want. So this come as part of the freemium offering. Freemium is also API Designer. So that's the first part of our API lifecycle. So that's the design part. So API Designer allows you to design an API contract, as I said, using a drag and drop approach. So I already have 2 models here, so I'm not going to go through the creation of a model from scratch because it would take longer to go through the whole demo. So this is how you can define an API contract using we follow the free mind approach. So again, API Designer, you can get for free a model. So you can go there, subscribe, and you will get 1 model for free. Obviously, for enterprise customers, they typically need several models. So for that, they will need a license. But this allows you to model an API contract only focusing on the data and so in REST, you typically should focus on nouns rather than actions. So that's a tool which can be used quite easily by, for example, a business analyst or product owner who they might not know OpenAPI specifications. So you can focus on, for example, this is easy to understand, right? It's a bank account API. You don't need to go through a long list of code to understand what the API does. This will eventually translate into OpenAPI specification. But whoever uses this, that don't need to know that. They can focus on, okay, my API needs to expose a noun, an account to allow someone to access all the accounts for this API. If I click on this icon, you can also add, for example, we can add, do we have a country here? Yeah, we can add a country code. So we call this country code. You can specify the type. You can also specify when this attribute will be available. Do we need this attribute, for example, when we are requesting an entity or only when the response comes back? Obviously, if you are creating an account, then probably you will need this attribute on the request and also on the response. You can specify examples. So for example, let's say since we are in Ireland, hopefully it's the right one. And this is very important because this is the example which we could be provided by a mock service. So this is a piece of information which someone building a mobile application will get when hitting the mock API. So this, in my opinion, has the double advantage of, first of all, documenting your API. We know, I used to be a developer, and to be honest, I didn't enjoy particularly writing documentation. So this is a way to somehow documenting your API, but also providing data which can be used by developers to start building their application. And if you think about it, it's also a contract for the developer who will build the API. So they will know what type of data the API needs to return. And again, you can do this without the fully understanding obviously understanding OpenAPI specification is a plus, but it is not required to use this tool. So once the API has been designed, what you can do is, if you click on push, you can do a few things. So you can see on the left, this is the OpenAPI specification presented in a Swagger format. So you can see how I went from a visual representation to a representation which is closer to what developers nowadays are used. So by simply clicking on buttons, that's the result of. So you can see the beauty now. I've got all this built for me in terms of data. So I know exactly what happens if I post to this endpoint when I create, for example, I want to push a new balance. I will get this data back. So it will be very easy for a developer to know what the API does. Obviously, you can export the OpenAPI specification. Just to give you an idea, let's see what that looks like. If I open this, let me, sorry. So that's all the code that I would need to write in order to build the same contract. So just to show you the complexity with which API designer really takes away from the developer, plus the benefit of, for example, enforcing governance and so on. Okay, so and finally, I can push the API into API Manager, so I can move to the next stage of the API management, which is securing, pushing the API to the portal so people can start discovering it. So now let's say I'm a developer. I already have an API contract because I like to code. So I'm fine doing my API contract using OpenAPI specification. So what I will do is to access API management. And the API management is where you can secure and monitor your API. So when you access the API manager, you are greeted with a dashboard which provides some statistics around how many APIs are currently managed through this instance of API manager, in particular in dev. Obviously, if I go to production, I don't use this for production purposes, so there is not much going on here. You can also access the analytics, so you can have a full overview of how all your APIs are performing. So what's the most common, for example, HTTP status code? You can see it's 400. What's the average response time of my APIs? You can see what is the application, for example, using, and what's the top API, top application consuming your APIs. Again, performance, you can see where your API has been used from. So I'm based in the UK. I'm not sure where this is coming from. Maybe could be some bot invoking my API. So yeah, that gives you an idea what you can achieve with the dashboard. So let's create a new API from scratch now. So what I will do is click on create, and then I will go through a very quick wizard, which allows me to start from having a contract to have an API deployed on a gateway, and also quickly I will be able to secure and publish the API on the portal. So we call this Meetup API. Give this version 1. 1.0. Just copy the description from here. So context path is when you deploy the API, you deploy the API on our gateway. And our gateway is a kind of multi-tenant gateway. So on each gateway can host several APIs. So obviously, if you're familiar with Nginx, for example, each API will need its own entry point to then forward the API, the request to the right API. So we'll call this, for example, a Meetup demo, which should be unique on this gateway. The next step is the backend. So once the API hits the gateway will do lots of things. Will apply policies, measure the API performance. So after that happens, and after all the policies are successful, where should the request go to? So this essentially is your backend, your SaaS software, your API implementation, and so on. So for this example, I'll just specify HTTP bin anything. Then you can define a plan. A plan is a contract between the developer and a consumer of the API. So imagine when you want to subscribe to an API, typically you would subscribe to Gold, Platinum, and so on. So each plan encapsulates different type of characteristics. For example, how the API will be secured if I subscribe to that plan, how many requests per second I can do for with that plan, how many requests per month, for example, I can also do. So that's typical. It's not different from a Netflix subscription. Essentially, it's the same thing. So let's create for now a free plan, and we'll secure this with a key list, which means I can essentially just use the API. And this is cool because that means Gravitee will ask you, if you don't want to secure your API, you have to be explicit about it. So you will never expose an API by mistake without any security. So I'm intentionally telling Gravitee, I want to deploy my API with no security. So I know what I'm doing basically. We call this pre-plan. And then we'll say, okay, I only want to allow, let's say, 2 requests every 3 seconds. Also, I can say, okay, since this person maybe is not paying, I'm only going to give them access to certain things. So I don't want to give them access to everything. So you can actually restrict which APIs one can access without any sort of authentication. So I can say, I will only allow access to Meetup demo. And then let's say we have an allowed endpoint. And I will only allow the get. So if I try to post to this endpoint, I will receive an error. Okay, I click on next. Now what you can do is to upload the documentation. So we can select, for example, the Swagger definition. So this is what I created using Visual Designer. You can also upload like pages in Markdown or Ashidoc. So this will be basically a human readable documentation for the API. And finally, I can choose whether I want to start the API on the gateway, or I want to create the API because maybe I want to continue managing my API. So if you think about this, sorry, this one, we have done the design. So now I can choose, do I want to go here first, or am I happy to start consuming the API? So for now, I will actually just create the API. So I can do a few things before the API is available on the gateway. So the first thing I want to do is to publish those 2 pages. So I want to publish my Swagger definition. And also I want to make this documentation page actually my homepage. So that's the first thing the developer will see when accessing the API. So in under pages here, you can customize the documentation for your API. So you can add, as you can see here, Swagger definition. You can upload images, attachments, depending on what is the governance around your API and what the organization mandates. So now I have an API which is already secure because we have a free plan. The documentation now, I am happy with that. I actually want to show you how the homepage looks like. So you can see I'm using Markdown with some variables, which is fine, nice, because you can potentially use the same file for all your APIs. So they will all have the same kind of structure. And this will be evaluated in real time on the portal. So now I want to publish the API. So this will make the API available on the portal so people can start discovering it. I can also start the API on the gateway potentially. So I will actually show you how now the API is already available for me to hit it. In fact, let's go to Postman. So you can see this is my gateway URL. This is currently running on our SaaS, but obviously, as I said, you can also run this on your laptop on a port 8082. And this is my API. So this was my context path, Meetup demo. So let's try to hit another endpoint, let's say accounts. So you will see that I will be not able to do, yes, sorry, I forgot another step, which is since we didn't publish the API using the wizard, I will also need to publish the plan. So we need to make this plan available on the portal so people can potentially subscribe to it, and also on the gateway. I could have done this directly in the wizard, but I choose to do this manually for the demo. So now if I try to hit the API, I will be greeted with a 403. And that's because, if you remember, when I configured the free plan, I said you can only access certain endpoint, which was the allowed. So now the request is hitting the gateway. The gateway will apply the policies, and now the request is going to the HTTP bin backend. If I try to post to this endpoint, so if I say want to apply test, I will also get an error, because if you remember, we only allowed get. So if I try to post this, this time I'm getting a 405 method not allowed, because we are only allowing get instead of post. So let's now look at the API on the portal. So we already published the API. We have a nice homepage. So this is our portal, which can be fully customized. So you can change the colors, you can change obviously the title. We also have the concept of categories. So you can potentially categorize your APIs based on, I don't know, theme, your API taxonomy. So you might have system APIs or maybe CRM APIs if you have multiple CRMs. And you can also apply security. So you can, for example, say, if you are someone belonging to HR, you won't be able to use the CRM APIs. I don't know why you would do that, but just an example here.
Yeah.
So now let's try and discover the API we just published. So if I search for Meetup, so that's the API we just published. So you will see the welcome page. So that's the custom page I've uploaded with. You can see some of those dynamic fields I specified in the Markdown. If I go to documentation, here we'll see the Swagger definition. Now here I can also add other pages. For example, I could have an FAQ, terms and conditions, and so on. You can also enable the tryout here, so people can click on a button and hit, for example, a sandbox. So they will be able to see what happens when they try to post or get to an API. Now from here, if I'm a developer, I want to start using the API. Typically, what I do is to click on subscribe. So this should allow me to select how I want to access the API. Now, this API only provides a free plan, which means if I want to use this API, I don't really need to do anything. I just hit the API, but then I will get those limitations. So now let's improve what developers can do with this API. So we want to allow now to, if the developer is registered, we want to give them ability to access all the endpoints without any restriction. Mm-hmm. So for that purpose, we add another plan. So now if I click on plus, we can call this, for example, the gold plan. So we need to specify a description. You can also you can also enable, by default, is actually enabled a workflow. So if someone requests access to the API, the API developer will need to accept that request.
Yeah.
And I just want to iterate that all you are seeing today is pretty much all open source. So everyone can potentially use this without any restriction. Okay, so now I click on next. So now this plan, we want it to be secured. So you have a few options here from actually more complex to simpler. First one is O2. So for example, if a developer is using our access management solution, they typically would select O2 here. If you're happy with protecting your API by simply checking the JWT token, then you would select JWT. So what this will do is to make sure the JWT token is signed by a trusted party. Now for this demo, we just choose API key. So that's the simplest. You simply have to provide an API key in order to access this plan and get full access to the API. There are a few options here. For example, I can choose to propagate the API key to the backend in case you want to use it to furtherly secure your API. So you might say, if the API key is equal to X, then don't allow the user to access this payload, for example. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now, since we want to remove restrictions, we won't select on anything. Maybe what we can do is to provide a limitation in terms of a number of requests per month. So we can say you're only allowed 1 million requests every month. So that's typically how plans are used. Okay, so now you can keep doing modification. So for example, I could change whether I want this auto validation to happen. If I potentially could change the security. But once I'm happy with the plan, what I can do is you can actually design also add extra security policies, but I will show you this later. Once you're happy with your plan, what you can do, what you should do actually is to publish the plan. So it's, sorry, this one. So first one makes the plan available on the portal. So I will show you what that means. And also you need to publish the API again on the gateway. So the API key will be processed by the gateway. Okay, so now we have an API, a new API plan available to which I can subscribe to. So let's go back to Postman. And again, if I try to hit the API with get here, I will be allowed only 2 requests per second. So you can see I'm getting a 49. And that's because I'm not specifying any key. So now let's subscribe to this API. So I will specify a key, so I won't get any restriction. So if I refresh the portal, so now you can see I can subscribe using 2 different plans. Free plan, obviously, you don't need to specify anything. That means the API is available with those restrictions. If I want to have full access to the API, I will subscribe to the gold plan. So now what you need to do is to create an application. What an application is within the portal, imagine you are building a mobile application. So you will need to create an application to attach the API key to. So this allows you to monitor, for example, you can have a web application potentially consuming several APIs, and you can have all those APIs attached to that application. So it allows you to monitor how your application is performing. So actually, let's create a new one. So I'll create a Meetup App. You can specify how your application is secured. It can be as simple, which is the case of API key. If your application is secured by O2, you typically specify an SPA, and then you specify what's the O2 flow your application supports. Now, in our case, it's an API key, and we say this is like a web application. At the same time, you can also subscribe to an API. So now we subscribe to the Meetup. So that's the same of going to the API and clicking on subscribe. It's just a shortcut. Because typically, if you are creating an application, it's because you want to subscribe to an API. In fact, we click on subscribe, and we can leave a comment to the API developer saying, I need access to this API to demo Gravitee to the Dublin developers, sorry, to the Linux Dublin developers community. Okay, you can review the details and create the app. So now the application has been created, but still I can't access the API because, as you can see, my request is still waiting. It's still waiting, which means the developer, the API developer, needs to provide me access to the API. So if I go back to the API console, you can see there is a new task for me. So there is a request to access the Meetup API using the Meetup app. So now I need to validate this request. You can see the message here. So I know why the API is being access is being requested. I can also see who is asking the subscription. Obviously, I'm logged in as myself, so that's still me. And now you can either reject the request or you can accept it, and also provide a time frame. So for example, if you're doing yearly plans, you can say, okay, I only want to give access to this API for 1 year. And then when the year is approaching, you might want to maybe renegotiate access to the API. So once you click on accept, a new API key is being generated. So now this is the key which the developer can use to access the API. So in fact, if I go back to the portal and I refresh this page, now the developer will see the request has been accepted, and also a new API key has been generated, which is what I should be using within my mobile app to invoke the API. So let's use this now. I copy the API key, and let's pass the API key as a parameter to the endpoint. So now you can see, obviously, I can still access the same endpoint, but now I can invoke the endpoint as much as I want without any error going on. I can also, for example, if you remember, I tried with accounts before and I couldn't access it because the free plan restrict access only to the allowed. So in like 2 minutes, we have been able to secure an API and define which API a developer can access when subscribing to a plan. Now, sometimes you need to apply other sort of policies. For example, you might have a multi-layer security tenure. An example could be, okay, I want to protect my API with the API key, but actually I'm building a microservice. I only want this API to be accessed by a certain IP address. So you can apply also further security, and you typically do that using our design flow. So Flow Designer allows you to apply policies to your API. You can see here, I already have 2 flows. So I could potentially apply policies to different flows. In fact, you can see the free plan and the free flow has 2 different policies. One is resource filtering to restrict me access to only this endpoint. And we also have the rate limiting, which is providing me with a limit of 2 requests every 3 seconds. I could potentially add a further limit here. For example, I could say, okay, I only want to provide access to a certain IP address. And that's where I specify either a whitelist, or if you are seeing like attempt of DDoS, you can also blacklist IP addresses. We also have like a set of 40 policies. So these all open source and available out of the box. This allows you to do stuff like if you want to transform an XML into a JSON or vice versa. So if you have an old API, for example, XML or web service, you can apply JSON to XML. So you can expose a nice API to a mobile developer and then do the transformation of the JSON into an XML. You can also transform like XML to XML. XML to XML. So the XML to XML is actually done by the XSLT transformation. So I don't know if you know XSLT. It's a way to transform an XML to a different format. Sometimes this could also be used to transform an XML into HTML, for example. Caching policy, mock service. So actually, let's do that. Let's say I want to mock my API and provide. Actually, let's do this. So once all the security policies have been, so let me do this. So if I apply the mock policy. So imagine I want to edit. I want to, okay, sorry, I think I need to refresh the page. Okay, mock policy. So let's say I want this API to always return 201, actually 200 because it's a get, maybe, and then we can return test a mock example. So when you publish the API from API Designer, this will all be done automatically. So for each endpoint, you will get a different mock response. So now if you deploy the API and try to hit the API, removing the key because we only made a change on the free plan, and we allowed. So now the response is coming to the mock policy, which means the API is not hitting the backend, which is useful when you want to start providing data to a developer while the API developer is building the API implementation. Normally, when you push the API from API Designer to API Manager, what you get is actually this. So you will get a list of endpoints. So this allows you really to be really granular of how you want to secure and transform an API. So for each endpoint and for each verb, HTTP verb, you can apply different type of policies. So you can go high level. So you will apply policies at the flow and plan, and those policies will be applied to all the flows. Or you can say, for example, for the post accounts, imagine you have someone providing a JSON and you want to transform that JSON into an XML, then you will apply specific policies to this specific endpoint. So you can be really granular how you want to manage your API. So if we go back to the wheel, what we have done is to design our API. Using a mock, you can also start prototyping applications. You can secure your API using the policy. You can also start publishing your API on the portal so people can start consuming it. The last part is typically around operational and deployment. We kind of deployed the API already. So how do you operate the API so you are able to capture, for example, errors or even to troubleshoot your API? So I've already shown you the analytics, and these actually are available at the API level. So before I shown you the generic one, but if I go to the Meetup API, you will already see some analytics being produced by my test on Postman. So you can see my 200, these are the successful requests. And there are also some errors. So you can see the errors are between 400 and 500. That's because I tried to hit the API without API key. I also hit my rate limiting. You can see the performance of the API, the applications, which are also hitting the API. So let me expand this to, yeah, so you can see the Meetup application, because that's because I've hit the API with the API key. So now what happens if, let's say, something is odd with the API? I want to do some troubleshooting. What I can do is to go on logs, and you can already see here some logging going on. So I can actually see and track the API traffic, but this doesn't really give me much detail about the API. So what I can do is to configure the analytics. So this will start logging more details around your API. So now if I click on save and redeploy the API, so let's hit the API again a few times. So let's like hit with get. Let's also try to hit with a post. Obviously this will error, but the request will still hit the gateway. Let's provide an API key. So this will this is probably the backend failing now. Okay, it doesn't matter. What I want to show you, I don't care about the API at this point in time. It's probably the backend failing. What I want to show you is what's happening now on the logs. So now you can see now, if I click on this, for example, now we'll be able to see the full API context. So now you can see there is nothing on the right. It is because if you remember, we applied the mock policy. So the request is actually not hitting the backend, but that's the mock policy responding. But you can see now, I can see all the headers being sent, all the payload as well. On the way back here on the bottom, you can see also the response. So this is the response which has been sent to the client. So if someone is complaining the API is not working, you can enable the logs and see what's like. If you go here, we should be able to see the request which is causing the error. So you will be able to troubleshoot your API implementation by using the content of the request, and also probably you might also be interested on what's the response the gateway is returning. So that's a way basically to allow developers to troubleshoot the API and potentially minimize the time to resolve an issue. And finally, the alerts. I'm not going to spend too much time here. I think the functionality is pretty intuitive. So what this allows me to do, imagine we want to monitor when my API is throwing errors too many times. So, or maybe if someone is trying to maybe misuse our free plan, what we can do, we can specify an alert, let's say critical, when certain conditions around the API requests are met. You can specify also a time frame. Imagine you want to enable an alert only over time. You can also specify when the alert should be activated. So what we want is to send an alert every time there is an error of equal to, let's say, a rate limit too many requests. So every time there is someone who is doing more than 3 requests per second, you can send an alert. But actually what you can do, instead of sending the alert every time, so you can say, I only want to send the alert every 10 instances of the error, because that means someone is trying to hit your API or using the free plan several times. And finally, you can also add one or many channels. So you can say, I want to send an alert as an email, or you can say, I want to send an alert as a Slack notification, or maybe you might have a webhooks. So you can also configure a webhook here. So yeah, this is kind of intuitive, but it's a quite powerful feature if you want to monitor your APIs. So that was the end of the demo, and I'm open to question now.
Wow.
That's a lot, right?
So
yeah.
So I was watching that with two mindsets that are linked. So yeah, from a guy who writes his own applications and REST stuff for fun at home, and somebody who does that for a living.
Yeah.
I do both.
Okay.
It makes me very sad. There's just so many of the really annoying bits that aren't really to do with your application,
exactly,
security, that are all just wrapped up here.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see how somebody sat down, because I've sat down and gone, okay, I need a JWT solution that's generic that I can reapply. And somebody's done that and then gone on and on and on. And I think it's brilliant. I
absolutely agree. I mean, there are different aspects there. One is, coding like a JWT verification. It can be a bit boring.
It's a thorough pain in the backside.
I used to be a developer. Honestly, I couldn't wait to have my API or my software just up and running. I couldn't bother with this annoying stuff. But it's also another aspect. These security things, in general, things change, right? And if things change, like what if you one day say, okay, I want to switch to a different security protocol because things have evolved, and that means you have to go back to your code, change your code, redeploy. This allows you to keep your API as it is. Maybe you can apply mutual TLS, so you are securing your API implementation with mutual TLS on the gateway, and that's never going to change. And then you can apply all sorts of security at the API gateway layer without changing your implementation. So even for a developer doing this at home, it's quite powerful, to be honest.
Yeah. There's just so many of the annoying things. You want better logging, so you've got to go in and make sure your logging's okay manually. I mean, most of these things take an hour or two, but there's hundreds of them.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Exactly.
And then you're always worried, did I actually implement the security in a secure way, or did I screw it up? This is.
It's a good point.
I'm trying to work out why I didn't already know about this.
But now what? Please spread word. As I said, the API management I haven't shown you, but actually, even equally important is the access. Sorry, I'm lost here. Okay, the access management solution. If you are, as I said, you could protect your API with API key, but if you want to, adopt or allow people to log in to your application using Google, using all sorts of, you can use access management for that. So for example, here, I have an application. So if I use this application, let's go to this URL. This will initiate my login flow. So I can allow a user now to log in either with a database. So the first one is a user configured within Access Manager, but you can also go configure Google. So typically what you do is to create an application in Google Cloud, which will provide you with some credentials, and then you can configure that within Access Manager. So you can have all this in a single place, but then your application doesn't need to worry about Google Auth, LDAP, or whatever solution you or the organization is using, because all you have to worry about is OT authentication. So that really takes the complexity of the authentication. Some customers, our customers have, Google Auth. They also want to expose so if I click on plus here, you can configure different identity providers like Salesforce, SAML, CAS. Imagine building a mobile application and allow someone logging in with a SAML. It's going to be a pain in the ass for a mobile developer to manage SAS or SAML. So what you can do is I'm going to allow my mobile developer to only have to deal with the OT authentication, and then Access Manager will take care of mediating between SAML and OT authentication. And then you can do this usual stuff of applying like roles to people. You can potentially manage the multi-factor authentication if they have it, and so on. So that's another, again, this is all open source as well. So feel free to go and play around.
The other selling point for me was watching the designer, because in the contract before last I'm a contractor. I spent so long writing open source API, open API documents by hand, and it was horrible. And it's also highly error prone. I mean,
especially if you do YAML.
Exactly. So you write it, and you go through the I didn't indent that. I misspelled that. I needed a capital letter. You go through all that pain, and then none of that's productive. It's just painful. Having said that, you start getting better at typing. But anyway, but watching you go, I've got all this lined up. I'll just push the generate button, and then I'll look at it in YAML. You go, I feel very jealous.
Absolutely. Obviously, there might be some time where you need to go into the code. If your OpenAPI specification, there are some capabilities which are very specific, or maybe they're not covered by the tool. But this really allows you to draft the basic of an API implementation, and then you can go wherever you want. You can,
well, those difficult little bits, they're the bits that are actually sort of fun because they're a challenge. It's all the, oh, you have to have indented, you do one,
the boilerplate, exactly.
Yeah.
So if I'm in one of the popular clouds, Azure, Google, or AWS, and I want a cloud native solution, do I have to go with the open source, or does your hosted solution integrate with these third-party services?
So you can deploy Gravitee wherever you want. So as I said, we provide a Helm chart. So to be honest, the majority of our customers, they are either running on bare metal or OpenShift, or they're running on one of the major public clouds like EKS on AWS, or So our SaaS is currently hosted on Azure, moving to AWS. So if, for example, a customer say, I don't care about running this on my own infrastructure, I've got already too many things to worry about, then we host the whole thing you saw here today in our cloud. Otherwise, customers can say, okay, I want to have control over where my APIs are living. Then they will definitely, as I said, the majority of our customers are actually running on their infrastructure, and we don't care what infrastructure is, because we provide all the, not these days is either Kubernetes or Docker. Not many customers run directly on Linux, but there are also supported.
Brilliant. Wow.
You work for a cool company.
No, it's
at least you have a cool product anyway.
We are a little gem, a known gem, but we are trying to be noticed.
I think you should be. I'm gonna push this to anyone that will listen. On both sides. Carry on.
I was gonna say we run some stats to see, because obviously being open source, we don't really know how many people use us. Probably only 5% of them come to us, and we measured around 350,000 downloads, Docker pool, per month. So it's we've got lots of people using us, but obviously we don't know them because of our open source nature. So
Wow.
Because I've actually sat there and thought I should try and build essentially this, although I would never have had an ambition as big as this, and now I don't. Now I'm sitting there thinking, no, I need to work out how to use that.
That's our founders, they started, because when they started, there were already API management solutions in place, but they were really expensive. So they said, okay, let's build our own, and then we can use this to propose this solution to our customers. And obviously, they became very popular. They decided to build a business on top of it. So but we are always going to keep our open source nature. So the management and access management component will always be open source. And obviously we will add more. We're actually expanding into async APIs. So at the moment if I don't know, if I go here, imagine I have a couple of Kafka topics I want to expose to a mobile developer. So normally what you can do is to build an async spec and have, I don't know if how much you know about async spec, but async spec provides several types of binding. And one of them is a WebSocket. So what you can do is to expose your Kafka topics into WebSockets. And all I have to do here is to configure my backend to be a Kafka. So here, the backend is an HTTP endpoint, which means the request will be routed to another REST API maybe. But this could actually be a Kafka topic or even gRPC service. So this allows you to expose a Kafka topic or a gRPC service using REST or WebSocket. So you don't need to deal with all the complexity. And Kafka provides several libraries for different languages to manage the access to Kafka. So with this, you will be able to ingest or to stream actually messages into Kafka using HTTP. So that's another, and we are actually redesigning our gateway to also to support webhooks, AMQP, MQTT, and so on. So that's all coming this year.
Wow.
Okay, so I was pretty good with time. It's 7:06. So yeah.
Be grand.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this.
Yes, no worries.